that God is the source, we are the resource, and then through the anointing, we are able to create assets. But here's the problem, is many times because we're working for someone else, we become their asset and we're not fully functioning in what we're called to do. Now, I want you to think about this. If you've read any books by Robert Kiyosaki, particularly the one I'm referencing is Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and how he talks about the fact that we need to understand that the reason we have a job is not just so that we can pay our bills, which is a good thing to do, and it's not just to pay our bills and then go buy toys. The reason we have the job is so that we can pay our bills and then we can buy assets. And then once we have enough assets, we no longer need that job. And what we can do then is we can have the assets provide the income that pays the bills, that buys more assets, and we literally take the job out of the equation. Why is that important to remind you today? Because every day, well, almost every day, when I go home as I'm eating dinner, I am reading online at whitehouse.gov and I'm hearing about how many people lost their jobs and how many layoffs there are and how much waste that they're finding and all the disruption that's happening. And I want to encourage you that if you are one of the individuals who are experiencing disruption in your life, take a deep breath. Because I know that many people are fighting to keep that job, but we've got to begin to put that job in the proper perspective. As this pressure is coming upon you, or maybe you say, Crystal, I'm not losing my job, but I'm going through a lot of pressure because of everything that's going on in the government and the changes that are coming. First of all, I would remind you that when a vision is given, what is the next thing that happens? Disruption. We've talked about this before. It's always evening and then morning. That's how the day works. So we have the vision, then disruption comes, the darkness that we just don't see what's going on, and then it breaks forth into light and we have the day ahead of us. So we must realize that whatever we're walking through right now in this disruption is so, I want to say, God ordained. What we're walking through is a huge shift. And if we can take this shift that's happening in our lives right now and realize that now is the time that we begin to look at where we are and say, hey, this isn't working anymore. We can begin to build new systems and new patterns and new things. Think about how I always talk about the business cycles, right? I talk about how there's a peak in the cycle and the different components of it. And then when the business is born, right, there's an infancy cycle. And then they say, okay, we start growing and it's the adolescent cycle that the business thinks it can do anything and then makes a lot of mistakes. And then comes the mature cycle where they're like, okay, we're not going to make those type of mistakes again. We've learned from our lessons. And this is where businesses get stuck. They get comfortable in being big and comfortable in sitting where they are. And when the time comes for them to reinvent themselves, to keep up with the time, to add more value, to provide more service, they say, well, that's not how our policy works. We're not going to do that. And that didn't work out very well for Sears, did it? It didn't work out for a lot of companies that refused to change with the time and make themselves current. Blockbuster, great example. The same thing applies to us as humans. We can look at businesses and say, why didn't they figure it out? The same question would go to you. We need to realize when we're coming through disruptive times in our life, God is literally handing us an opportunity that we can begin to say, oh, I think this is an indicator that perhaps what worked in the past is not going to work anymore. And now I must plan a different way for the future. That would be my encouragement for you today, is to understand these disruptive times are actually for our good. It's when the pressure comes and we recognize the pressure that we know we can move forward. I've met with many business owners. I'm thinking about one last night. I had a cup of coffee with her and she explained 50% of my business is gone. I don't know what to do. And then we began to brainstorm. We began to talk about ways that she could evolve, ways to bring her business into the next era that we're going into. And as she began to talk about it, excitement began to build as she realized, wait a minute, I don't have to be stuck in the past in the old ways we did things. God has something new and exciting. Allow the pressure to open your eyes to say, okay, I'm not rolling over. I'm not playing dead. I'm not giving up. I'm just saying, God, you're restructuring me. Have your way, Lord, and bring me into this golden new era. Help me to see what I now need to do. Thank you, and God bless.